If you've ever wondered how such a rich, advanced country can feel so incapable, you're not alone. That frustration is what Mark Dunkelman explores in Why Nothing Works. America still dreams big, but its system now struggles with even simple tasks. The strange part is that the US, once, built massive projects quickly and effectively. What changed? Dunkelman argues we're stuck between two instincts, protecting liberty and using power to get things done. Over time, the fear of abuse has grown so strong that it now blocks action itself. This isn't about one villain. It's about how good intentions and layers of safeguards slowly turned a functioning system into one that produces more paperwork than results. The original American tug of war. From the very beginning, the United States was born with two competing impulses. One impulse is deeply suspicious of centralized authority. This is the Jeffersonian instinct. Power is dangerous, government tends to overreach, and people need protection from distant bureaucracies. That mindset is baked into America's founding story, especially the Declaration of Independence, which is basically a formal breakup letter to a faraway empire that was taxing and controlling people who felt they had no real voice. The other impulse is more Hamiltonian. Sure, power can be abused, but without enough centralized authority, government can't do anything meaningful. You can't build national systems, enforce rules fairly, or deliver public goods at scale if every decision can be blocked by local factions and competing interests. Early America tried Jefferson's approach in practice under the Articles of Confederation. The result, as Dunkelman frames it, was chaos. The national government was weak. States behaved like semi-independent countries. Decisions became painfully difficult. In modern terms, it was like running a nation where almost everyone had the ability to filibuster everything, all the time. So the Constitution was an attempt to split the difference. Not a king, not anarchy, something in between. But the tension never disappeared. It just became the permanent background music of American politics. America swings. It doesn't sit still. Dunkelman's bigger point is that America tends to swing between extremes. Sometimes we have too much centralized power, enough to bulldoze communities, ignore ordinary people, and act with a kind of arrogant certainty. In those eras, citizens push back, demanding more accountability, more constraints, more rights, more procedure. Other times, power becomes so fragmented that nothing can get done. Decisions move slowly, projects stall, and basic governance feels like pushing a piano uphill through wet sand. In those eras, people start longing for effectiveness again, something closer to the Hamiltonian version of competent state capacity. America, in this view, is a country that keeps overcorrecting. When power feels oppressive, we build safeguards. When safeguards become paralyzing, we start wishing for power that can actually act. The tragedy is that both instincts come from real experiences, and both can be right. Why distrust became rational. Distrust in government didn't come from nowhere. People watched real failures, corruption, Vietnam, Watergate, environmental disasters, and unaccountable elites, and learned that powerful institutions can do real harm. Demanding limits wasn't paranoia, it was self-defense. Dunkelman agrees, but adds an uncomfortable truth. In trying to protect ourselves from abuse, we may have gone too far. We built a system so focused on stopping power that it now struggles to use power at all. The Tennessee Valley Authority. If you want a clear example of America doing something big and effective, look at the Tennessee Valley Authority from the New Deal era. Large parts of the Upper South were trapped in poverty, ignored by private power companies that saw no profit in serving them. Millions lived without electricity and modern infrastructure. The TIVA was government stepping in where the market failed. It had sweeping powers to build dams, power plants, and transmission lines, and it moved fast. In a short time, a vast, struggling region was transformed. It wasn't perfect. There were environmental costs and moral failures. But its impact was undeniable. The TVA shows what government can achieve at speed and scale, and how far today's system has drifted from that ability. Why we can't build clean energy like we built the Tennessee Valley Authority. Today, doing something as bold as the TVA, like building national clean energy infrastructure, feels nearly impossible. We already have the technology, but building itself has become the real obstacle. Every project turns into a battlefield of objections over routes, views, neighborhoods, wildlife, and lawsuits. Many of these barriers were created for good reasons, to protect communities, the environment, and civil rights. The problem isn't the values, it's that the process never ends. What began as giving people a voice has slowly turned into giving everyone a veto. A perfect modern case study. One of Dunkelman's clearest modern examples is the failed rollout of a national EV charging network. The idea was simple: people won't buy electric cars because they fear running out of power, and companies won't build chargers because there aren't enough drivers yet. A classic chicken and egg problem. So the federal government stepped in with $7.5 billion to break the cycle. On paper, it made sense. In practice, it collapsed into bureaucracy. Funds passed through state agencies with no experience in charger networks, then through layers of siting rules, bidding systems, lease talks, and utility negotiations. Those who objected had more power than those trying to build. Years later, billions were spent and very little was delivered. Not because of laziness, but because the system is designed to slow itself down. The villain who accidentally rewired progressivism. Dunkelman traces today's paralysis back to the 1960s and 70s and the legacy of Robert Moses, the powerful New York official who reshaped the city. Moses built highways, parks, and housing on a massive scale, wielding authority so great that he could ignore public opposition, and often did. His most infamous project, the Cross Bronx Expressway, tore through neighborhoods despite desperate community protests, helping devastate the South Bronx. For progressives, this became a warning about unchecked, centralized power. In response, they built layers of safeguards, environmental reviews, community input rules, historic protections, and rights to sue. These reforms succeeded, perhaps too well. The same system meant to stop destructive projects can now stall beneficial ones, turning nearly every major build into a slow war of delay and litigation. National Environmental Policy Act and the rise of paper government. A symbol of this shift, the National Environmental Policy Act, passed in 1970. The intent was reasonable: require planners to consider environmental impacts and alternatives so projects aren't reckless. But over time, legal interpretation turned the process into something massive. Instead of a manageable review, agencies began producing documents that stretch into thousands of pages, less because the project is always apocalyptic, and more because the agency must anticipate every possible objection in advance. The fight often becomes less about the real-world impact and more about whether the documentation is thorough enough to survive a courtroom battle. If opponents can argue the study missed something, they can drag the project back to the start. So the state becomes a writer of enormous reports, because writing is safer than building. We built the crisis into the rules. Dunkelman argues the housing shortage follows the same logic. America has land, it has materials, it has builders, it has decades of experience constructing homes. So why does it feel impossible to build enough housing where people actually live and work? Because we've created a system where people who already own homes have powerful incentives to keep communities stable, especially when those homes are treated like retirement plans. Change threatens property values, neighborhood character, traffic patterns, school crowding, and personal comfort. Renters fear gentrification and displacement. Everyone agrees housing is needed, just preferably somewhere else. That somewhere else mindset becomes policy through zoning restrictions, permitting battles, public hearings, and legal challenges. Again, not because concerns are fake, but because the system transforms concerns into veto power. A voice without a veto. Dunkelman's proposed direction is simple to say and hard to execute. People should have a voice. They should be informed early. Their concerns should be heard and taken seriously. But the process cannot be infinite, and not everyone can be allowed to kill a project by default. In other words, the country needs a governance model where community input exists without letting obstruction become the governing principle. He frames this as the next progressive challenge. How do you prevent Robert Moses-style abuse without making it impossible to do good? How do you create discretion, real decision-making power in public institutions while still holding those institutions accountable? America didn't lose its ability to build, it lost its ability to decide. The real fix isn't choosing freedom or power, it's designing a system where people get a voice, but progress can still happen. If this made you see modern dysfunction differently, drop your take in the comments, and if you want to be smarter every day, like and subscribe.